2026 is not a year to be written off. It's one of those rare pivotal moments in the astrology where the sky stops whispering and starts screaming at us loudly. We're talking reality shifting conjunctions with historic implications and eclipses that close a big karmic chapter in one area of your life, only to begin shifting your destiny in a completely new way. 2025 was a year of big cosmic shifts with all of the outer planets and the lunar nodes changing signs. It was a year of major disruption marked by pivotal endings and nebulous new beginnings. And while the astrology of 2026 does bring much needed support and momentum while nudging this storyline along, it also reroutes the entire plot. If you've been patiently waiting for a year that actually moves the needle in your healing, your purpose, your relationships, your spiritual growth, and your role within the collective, 2026 is that year. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the major transits of 2026 month by month so you can understand the bigger story and start working with these energies instead of feeling like they're working against you. And as we walk through 2026 together, transit by transit, I'll also share which sun, moon, and rising signs are going to be impacted more positively and which ones are going to have a little bit more challenge for each and every transit we discuss. So you're going to get a little bit of personal astrology in this forecast too. That way you can start anticipating the themes, opportunities, and challenges shaping your personal year ahead. And as always, we're going to be diving deeper into every single transit that we'll be discussing in this video in more extended deep dive forecasts throughout the year, including monthly forecasts for all 12 signs. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an important astrology update throughout the entire year in 2026, because this is a big one. And as an added bonus, my astrology forecast and tutorials from here on out are going to be available on all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can go over there and listen to the audio only version, download it and listen to it on the go if you don't have Wi-Fi like me. And if you're already listening to the audio version of this forecast, it would really help us out if you leave us a 5-star review. That's going to help ensure that we can continue providing my astrology forecast, tutorials, and future interviews in this audio only podcast format. And before we really dive into this forecast and pick the year apart transit by transit, I just want to mention that I am hosting a brand new workshop called Celestial Self-Care. This is the third and final workshop in my Celestial Self-Healing Medical Astrology Workshop series that I began way back in 2024, and this one is very needed. 2025 was a rough year for a lot of people. Like I mentioned before, all of the outer planets were changing signs. We were in this liminal space where we were moving from one reality, shifting into a new one, not really knowing what was happening next. And so many people had a hard time with really big disruptions and changes throughout the year. That's why I decided that I wanted to host this workshop in January so you can start 2026 off right, so you can take care of yourself right. This is going to be a really in-depth medical astrology workshop that's appropriate for all levels. As long as you have some basic knowledge of the signs, planets, and houses, you can use this to understand how to get better sleep, how to regulate your nervous system, how to choose the self-care routines that are best for your body based on your unique astrological blueprint, so you can rest, reset, restore, and come back fresh and ready to take on whatever the heck 2026 is going to throw at us. This is going to really help you hone in on what's best for you personally. We are all different. Everyone's bodies are different, and our astrology shows us that. This is going to help you understand what you personally need to get deep restorative rest, to get deep restorative sleep, to have a deeper connection with yourself, with your body, to have a deeper connection with your nervous system, and to help yourself stay calm and feel good, and to improve your health across the board by de-stressing and regulating yourself. This is going to be a super fun workshop. It's very useful and very needed right now. And so I am teaching this workshop live on January 31st, but if you enroll in advance, you're going to get 50% off, so you can join for only $29. And if you're watching this video in December when it comes out, if you join us before the end of the year, you're going to get an even bigger discount. You're going to join us for only $19. Many of you probably don't actually know that I have a background in clinical psychology, a master's degree, and a background in and mind-body therapies, including trauma-informed yoga therapy, other forms of yoga therapy and breath work. And so this is right up my alley. This is the workshop that I need to be teaching. On top of that, I suffered from insomnia for almost 25 years, and I was able to shift out of that and heal myself utilizing some of the techniques that I'm going to share with you in this workshop, along with my own personal astrology, which I'm going to help you tap into your personal astrology around rest, recovery, and sleep as well. So if this sounds exciting for you or nourishing and calming to you, you can find the link with all of the juicy details down in the description below. I cannot wait to see you in class. All right, so now we're ready to dive into all of the little details about the astrology of 2026, including who's going to be hit the hardest. So grab your chart, maybe also a notebook and some tea, hit that like button, and let's dive in. So before we get into each individual transit, I want to discuss more broadly the shift of the Mercury retrogrades fully into the water signs for all of 2026. Mercury retrograde in the water signs is going to have us thinking more intuitively, more compassionately, more creatively, and less logically. And this isn't just during the Mercury retrograde periods, because Mercury will be slowing down, going backward, slowing down again, speeding up, going forward, basically moving back and forth through the water signs. It's gonna be in the water signs for way longer than it normally is. We're having extended Mercury water sign energy. This is going to be a year where our rational minds, our logic, takes a bit of a hit. But this is an excellent energy for creative types of people. This is an excellent energy for expressing your emotions, for sharing how you feel. In fact, you'll probably find that a lot of the headlines this year are going to be more emotional and more oriented toward creativity, more oriented towards spirituality, because the energy is not supporting focusing on what's logical and what's factual. It's focusing more on how things feel to us emotionally, intuitively, and in our bodies. This is also going to be how we make decisions throughout 2026. A lot of people are going to be making decisions a lot more irrationally. And our decision-making processes are going to be subject to the whims of our emotions, which is sometimes a good thing. If you're feeling really good about something and it's the right thing for you and your intuition is really strong and it's pulling you in, then great. But other times, if you're in a bad state and you're making decisions out of fear or sadness or anger or whatever it is you're feeling in the moment, that might change a couple days later and you might regret what those decisions were. And so this is a time where if you want to have good decision making, if you want to have that rational, logical, linear thinking, you're going to have to incorporate it much more consciously. But for those of you who are too rational, too logical, too linear, this is an invitation to start trusting your gut, trusting your feelings, trusting your intuition, allowing something deeper to guide you and to lead you in a different direction. In my blog post on 2026, I equated this to feeling as if you're navigating a foggy foreign landscape, but your compass is broken and you have to go just on instinct. Like, that's what this year feels like with that Mercury retrograde energy and Mercury traversing through the water signs for so long. And so this is an opportunity to really hone in on our instincts, because we're going to see very clearly when they're right and when they're very off as a result of the decisions that we're making, as a result of the things that we're sharing, as a result of the ideas that we're coming up with, the plans that we're making that may or may not work out so well. And on the communication side of things, because that is very much a Mercury retrograde situation, especially during the Mercury retrogrades, we are going to be reading between the lines way more so than not. And so just be aware of that, and be aware of the fact that sometimes there's nothing to read in between the lines. People are going to be getting offended. They're going to be drawing conclusions based on how they feel about something, based on something feeling a little bit off, based on how they're feeling in the moment and what they're projecting into the words that you're saying, or what you're projecting into the words that they're saying. And so this is great for compassionate communication and communicating more intuitively, but There's also a danger of taking it too far and not listening to what a person is actually saying and the facts of the situation, and being guided more by, again, the way that you're feeling, these emotional currents. So these 3 Mercury retrogrades happening in the water signs this year in 2026 are happening first in the sign of Pisces from February 25th through March 20th, then in the sign of Cancer from June 29th through July 23rd, and then finally in the fall in the sign of Scorpio from October 24th through November 13th. And so in order to work with and not against these retrograde energies that are coming up in the coming year, I highly recommend that you slow down your decision making before, during, and after every single Mercury retrograde, during those shadow periods as well, because in the shadow periods, Mercury will be lingering in those irrational, emotionally driven water signs. I also highly recommend being extra clear about what you actually mean. Don't assume that people know. Don't assume that they can read your mind. Don't assume that just because you are being a little passive aggressive that someone's going to pick up on that. You have to state very clearly the facts of the situation, what's going on and what's not going on, and ask for clarification from other people in return if you feel like something's off, or you feel like maybe there is something that you need to read in between the lines about. I also highly recommend that you treat misunderstandings as information that you can use for your own growth. What you thought someone meant versus what they actually meant can reveal a lot about you, about what you're going through, about what's unhealed emotionally and psychologically within yourself. Take this as an opportunity to reflect, especially during those reflective Mercury retrograde periods. And finally, use this emotional flow to fuel creativity. This is an excellent time for journaling. This is an excellent time for taking up a new spiritual practice or learning about a new form of spirituality. This is an excellent time for any type of creative self-expression that feels good to you. Mercury retrograde in the water signs doesn't have to feel confusing. These energies are here to help you feel your way into clarity. These periods will pull you out of the noise and back into the truth of what's happening on the inside. And this is where your most meaningful insights typically originate anyway. And so the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be most positively impacted and that are going to flow a lot more easily with this Mercury retrograde energy are the water signs, unless it's happening in your water sign. And so when the Mercury retrograde is happening in Cancer, for example, Scorpio and Pisces will feel this in a more positive way. When Mercury retrograde is happening in Scorpio, Cancer and Pisces will feel this in a more positive way. When Mercury retrograde in February is in Pisces, Cancer and Scorpio will feel this in a more positive, flowing way. Also, the earth signs, because these are also receptive feminine signs and are being aspected positively by these Mercury retrograde transits. So Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn will all be feeling this in a more harmonious fashion. The signs that are going to be most challenged by all of this are the masculine signs, which are the more active fire and air signs. So this is Aries, this is Libra, this is Aquarius, this is Leo, this is Sagittarius, this is Aries. All of these signs are going to be hit a little bit harder, and they're going to have a much harder time navigating this, not just because they are more action-oriented and more logical, very much fact-based in the here and now, thinking over feeling, but they're also going to be aspected in a way that's more challenging by these Mercury retrogrades. And so if you have a lot of energy in any of those signs, you're more likely to be challenged with misunderstanding things, to be challenged with expressing your emotions appropriately during these Mercury retrograde periods. So moving on from the Mercury retrogrades, January kicks off with Saturn's final sextile to Uranus. So this is a transit that's been ongoing for many months now, almost a year. We had the very first pass of Saturn in the sign of Pisces in a sextile with Uranus and Taurus back on April 4th of 2025 at the end degrees of those signs. It passed again on August 12th of 2025, again at the end degrees of Taurus. and in Pisces. And then we have the final pass on January 19th of 2026. And this is really the closing out of a big chapter for a lot of reasons. Saturn is about to move on from Pisces once and for all, and it won't come back for another 28 to 30 years. And Uranus is about to move out of the sign of Taurus back into the sign of Gemini, where it's going to stay for another 8-ish years. And so we're not going to have another chance to deal with this energy in the exact same way. Saturn in Pisces is already about dissolving boundaries and structures, because Saturn is structure and form, and Pisces is the formless. When Saturn joins forces with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which is normally a very stable, very responsible, very predictable type of energy, it's going to create a lot of chaos where old structures, old material paradigms, old ways of being that we thought were reliable are no longer so. This is the end of the era of cryptocurrency being front and center, and the beginning of the era of AI being front and center, and new communication technologies. This is a big cosmic restructuring in all of our individual lives around the two areas that are being impacted by Saturn and Uranus. And so this is about making those final lasting changes, because again, these planets are not coming back into these signs for a very long time, and the sextile is not happening again. So thinking back to what was going on back in like March, April, May of 2025, again in the summer, June, July, and August, the subtle changes that you were making, the subtle restructuring that you were doing, the pivots that you were working on and working through in order to create a better, more solid foundation for yourself in the realms of Piscean types of things like spirituality, creativity, compassion, intuition, charity work even. These types of things are coming back around again one final time for you to solidify what you've created. There's one last chance to activate the sextile, because with sextiles, they're harmonious, yes, but they don't work on their own in the same way that trines do. Sextile energy does need to be actively engaged with. And in this particular circumstance, it's a more receptive energy because we have it in the water and the earth signs, which are both feminine receptive signs. They're both feminine receptive energies that these planets are in. And so it's almost as if you have to kind of pay attention and respond to what's going on around you in order to create that new structure, that new paradigm around the topics and themes that we just discussed. This is also about making real material changes, because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, which is the most physical, tangible, material, plain and simple sign in the zodiac when it deals with the physical reality and what that means. And so this is the last chance to take those structures that we thought were predictable, that we thought were reliable, that were mundane, boring, stable, but we found comfort in that stability, and to transform and change it into something new. We've already been going through this process for at least 8 years now. Now is the last chance to make those final pivots. It's going to be very apparent where we did not create the foundations that we needed, where we did not make the last changes that we needed to make in order to move on to this into something better. January is that chance, and into February as well. So nobody should really be negatively impacted by this transit, even those who are getting really harsh hits from Saturn. So people who have a lot of sun, moon, rising, planetary energy in the mutable signs, which are the signs of Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, and also Uranus. So those who have a lot of energy in the fixed signs, who've been hit hard by Uranus for the last 8 years. The fixed signs, of course, being Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, as this sextile provides a mitigating influence from those challenges and out, a way to kind of see things through, because there's an outside support system coming in to help. But most positively affected are going to be those who have a lot of energy in the earth signs, so Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, and the water signs, which are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. You're going to see the most benefit from this, and you've probably already seen the most benefit from this, even if it's been subtle. over the last year. Then on January 26th of 2026, Neptune is going to re-enter the sign of Aries, where it first dipped in from March 30th of 2025 through October 22nd of 2025. So we already experienced the kickoff of this energy, and I talked about it in great detail in my forecast video on Saturn and Neptune transiting the sign of Aries, because these two planets are going to be moving through the sign of Aries together, essentially as a unit, especially at the very beginning, and especially this year, because we're going to have that big Neptune-Saturn conjunction that has great historical significance, and that's going to bring a big reset in all of our lives. In the video on Neptune transiting the sign of Aries, not only did I give a forecast for all 12 signs, but I talked about a lot of the major life themes that are coming up around this time, around this transit. And so Neptune is the planet of dreams, illusion, fogginess, disillusionment, but it's also the planet that's most closely associated with spirituality, charitability, compassion, interconnectedness. It's basically what blurs the line between what's real and what's not real. That is Neptune. And it's going to be moving into the sign of Aries, which is very, not material, but physical, very action oriented. Aries is ruled by the planet Mars. It has this sense of intention, will, ambition, drive, that in the sign of Neptune doesn't really fit well together. I did talk about the archetype of the spiritual warrior being more of a thing. You will hear a lot more talk, I would say, about us being in some sort of spiritual war or something along those lines. This is also an energy that is associated with the American Civil War, which makes sense. It was kind of a confusing time where boundaries were blurred, and Aries is literally named for the god of war. And so all of those themes and topics could come back up around this time. But really, on an individual level, this is more about elevating and idealizing Aries types of topics and themes. And so idealizing the hero, idealizing the savior, idealizing the warrior, idealizing the person that fights for what's right, as opposed to Neptune in the sign of Pisces, where we were idealizing the victim, where we were idealizing the guru, the spiritual teacher, that type of thing. Now it's more about idealizing people that are more ambitious, more driven, more willful, more individualistic, people who take action, that type of thing. And so that's going to be a big part of it. This is also going to create a nebulous and confusing energy in a new and exciting area of our lives. You would have had a taste of what that looks like for you personally back in March through October. That'll come back around. So those topics and themes around that confused type of sensation where it's kind of like something new is starting, but you're not sure exactly what form it's going to take, or you're feeling confused about making decisions or just engaging with a very specific topic or area of life. That's going to be coming back around. And very shortly after Neptune revisits the sign of Aries, we're going to have Saturn re-entering Aries. And so we got a taste of what that looked like in combination with Neptune back in May through September of 2025. So Saturn last entered the sign of Aries on May 24th of 2025 through September 1st of 2025. And so thinking back to the challenges, the hardships, the lessons that came to you around that time, where things felt like they were going a little bit more slowly, things felt like they were a little bit more delayed, and that delay could have come through lack of support and confusion, because Saturn in the sign of Aries has no support from the sign that it's in. It's in the sign of its fall. And Neptune in the mix makes things very unstructured, very confusing, very hard to pin down in a rigid, locked in practical Saturn sort of way, because Saturn likes things to be regimented. Saturn likes things to be planned out. Saturn is a very perfectionistic planet, even more so than the sign of Virgo. Saturn and Saturn heavy people tend to be very perfectionistic. They like things done in a certain way. They are the rule followers. They are meticulous. And Saturn does not like to be rushed. And in the sign of Aries, it is rushed to do everything. When Saturn is in its home signs of Capricorn and Aquarius, it has a certain structure to it. It has rules that it can follow, the proper channels it can go through. It has a purpose where it's building something for the future in the sign of Aquarius. When Saturn is in the sign of Libra, there is a balance, there is a fairness to the lessons Saturn is delivering. It's intended to create equality and harmony, even if it's not easy always to get there. But when Saturn's at its fall in Aries, it's under the domain of Mars. Mars is a planet of instantaneous action. It's the most impatient of all the planetary energies. It wants what it wants when it wants it, and it wants it now. Saturn doesn't like that. So Saturn, the only way that it can actually deliver its challenges and lessons is in this hasty, haphazard, in the moment, instantaneous type of way. And the only way that you can deal with those challenges and mitigate them is in the moment, again, in this hasty, haphazard way where there's no care given to the future because you're putting out fires in the moment. That's not how Saturn operates. Saturn likes to operate in the realm of delayed gratification, where the lessons and the challenges and the hardships and the hurdles all lead somewhere. They all help you to further your goals in the future. It's all about sacrificing something now in order to get something better later on. With Saturn transiting Aries, that's not what we're getting. We're getting hardship that comes up in a way that is quick, where we have to deal with it really quickly, and the ramifications of it are long-lasting, but not in a productive sort of way. And so this Saturn through Aries transit is going to last until April 12th of 2028. And again, it's not existing in a vacuum. It's existing with Neptune. And so that's a big energy with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which comes exact on February 20th of 2026, shortly after Saturn and Neptune both re-enter the sign of Aries. It's happening at 0 degrees. This location in the sign of Aries is also known as the world point. It has mundane and global astrological implications. And this marks a once-in-a-lifetime turning point, a collective reset that becomes exact on this February 20th date, but we've been feeling it all through 2025, and we're going to continue to feel it all through 2026. So collectively, Saturn is the structure, the hierarchy, it's the authority, it has to do with government, rules, regulations. So when Saturn moves into the sign of Aries, it can feel a little bit more authoritarian, it can feel a little bit more ambitious and driven by ambition. It can feel a little bit more volatile. But with Neptune in the mix, Neptune and Saturn historically, when they come together, have been associated with major energies involving collectivism, but also communism and socialism and things of that nature. And so you can expect those topics and themes to all come up in 2026 in a big way, and not necessarily a nice way. As we know, Saturn is at its fall in this position, and so the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening in a way that's not going to be fully supported by the energy of the sign that it's in, and is not going to be fully supported in general. It's a little bit more haphazard than that. On a personal level, you have already felt this. There has been, as I mentioned before, an area of your life where you've been trying to create structure and it's all just been falling apart. It's kind of like, what are the rules here? What do I do next? How do I take the next steps without something crazy coming up and throwing me for a loop again that creates these challenges and hurdles that are maybe insurmountable? It's also a confusion around boundaries and structures in the area of life that's being impacted by that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. This is a big reset where certain boundaries and structures that have been thrown together hastily and haphazardly do need to be dissolved in all of our lives, and that's going to be a big part of this. But there are also new structures being created and new challenges that are coming up that we're not going to know how to face. There's a lack of clarity here. So it's kind of like we are building in the fog. We are having to build this like giant staircase, but we don't actually know what the heck it's leading to because it's too foggy and too unclear at the top, and it could lead us into some sort of beautiful paradise, or it could lead us right off a cliff. There's no way of knowing at this point. But what we do know is that this is the beginning of something brand new. Collectively, things are not going to look the same after this energy passes, and individually, things are not going to look the same after this energy passes. When we first started having this sort of connection between Saturn and Neptune, AI artwork was a huge thing that started just blowing up all over the place when Saturn first moved into Pisces. And then as this moved further and further and further in, and they started to conjoin, we started to see this line that was being blurred out in the ethers and out in the internet sphere between what's real and what's not real. It's beyond misinformation and fake news and whatever else. We literally can't tell anymore from a video that is like a person talking if that's actually them or if it's a computer generated video. We can't actually tell if this thing that we're seeing actually happened or if it's AI. So the lines getting blurred are going to increase with this conjunction, but now it's in the sign of Aries, and I almost feel like it's leading to something volatile. So I don't love this energy, but for some people, you're going to be impacted a little bit more positively than others. And so the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be positively impacted with a good reset that sets you into a new direction by dissolving boundaries that need to be dissolved and creating something new out of those old structures, out of the rubble of those old structures. That's going to be more adaptive, and that's going to work better for you and your goals and ambitions. Those signs are going to be sun, moon, rising people in the signs of Leo and Sagittarius. For those who are going to be challenged the most, Aries, of course, because this is happening in your sign, this is kind of a difficult time for you to navigate in your life, especially if you were born at the early degrees of Aries. All of the cardinal signs, so that includes Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, will also be feeling this in a much more challenging way. And also Aquarius will be feeling this in a challenging way as well. And so those are the signs that are going to have a little bit of a more difficult time navigating this energy. Now, around the same time that we have this big transformative reset energy ushering in global change around the world point at 0 degrees in the sign of Aries, we also have eclipse season coming in. And it starts with a solar annular eclipse that's going to be happening for the first time in the sign of Aquarius. And so we're coming from a full year, roughly, of the lunar nodes transiting the signs of Pisces and Virgo. They're not actually shifted out of these signs. And so this is an out of sign eclipse where we have the north and south nodes. If we're looking at the true node, which is what I like to use for eclipse predictions, versus the mean node, which is what I like to use for just predictions in general. So we have the north and south nodes sitting at roughly 9 degrees in the sign of Virgo and Pisces, with the north node in Pisces and the south node in Virgo. And the actual eclipse is happening at 28 degrees, the end degrees of the sign of Aquarius. This is where the north node will be transiting in just a few months, but it's not quite there yet. This is giving us a sneak preview of the brand new path, the brand new fated karmic evolution of our soul that we'll be moving into over the course of 18 months, beginning this summer in July and August. But this first pass is giving us a taste, it's giving us a hint, it's pushing us in a new direction, and it's going to feel absolutely massive because the eclipse itself is conjunct Mars in the sign of Aquarius. Mars is all about initiation. It's about action. It's very volatile. It's very quick. and it's squaring very, very closely Uranus, which is at the end degrees of Taurus. It's about to be moving out of Taurus for the very last time. And so in addition to having that sextile that we talked about between Saturn and Uranus, which has since moved on because Saturn has changed signs, we're going to have this final big massive activation of Uranus in Taurus where something really radical needs to end in order for us to move forward into the change that we need to make in a new area of our lives. So this is going to be about a radical reset, radical endings that are going to point us toward new beginnings that haven't quite formed yet. So it's kind of like we are doing the preliminary research, the preliminary signs, synchronicities, messages, the preliminary change that needs to happen for us to get into that big transformation. Those things are what are happening at the time of this solar annular eclipse. But it's going to feel like a lot is happening because not only is a Mars-Uranus square being highlighted, which always brings volatility, which always brings things that come really abruptly, begin and end really abruptly. It's a big shake up, disruptive energy. But we also have that Saturn-Neptune conjunction just 3 days out from this eclipse. Globally, I would be surprised if we didn't see something big happening around this time. Mars-Uranus energy usually brings that by itself. Adding an eclipse, adding that conjunction between Saturn and Neptune at the world point. I mean, this is volatile energy. Something is going to be shooken up. Something that there's been whispers of prior to this time that we're going to have to go all in on, something that needs to be changed or ended once and for all in order to shift into the next paradigm that we're going to be shifting into with Uranus in the sign of Gemini. I mean, this is a big one, but on an individual level, this is going to feel like a shock and awe type of energy where we thought we were moving forward in one area and then all of a sudden there's this new thing that comes up that disrupts our progress, that shows us that there's something else that we need to be focusing in on here. This is an energy where I hate to say it this way because it is kind of like a cop-out, but expect the unexpected, because whatever you think is going to be changing in your life as a result of this Mars-Uranus square and the eclipse that's highlighting it, it's not going to be the thing that you think it is. It never is. If last time around when you had a similar activation of Uranus, you had a change in your career path, this time around it's going to be a completely different thing. It's going to be, instead of a new job, it's going to be a new house, right? It's going to be something completely wild and unexpected, or it's going to come about in a way that is wild and unexpected. These are energies that are so unique and so different from our current paradigm and our current worldview that we don't have a context for actually predicting what comes next on that individual personal level. We know change is coming. You might feel a lot more anxious and a lot more on edge at this time. Definitely check out my Celestial Self-Care Workshop, which is happening just a couple weeks before this to help you regulate your nervous system and get through this crazy month in February. That's also a big reason why I scheduled it for that time, because I wanted to get it in before things got a little dicey. But this is the time to pull out all the stops. So you want to stay grounded. You want to make sure that you're doing all of the things to keep your nervous system calm. A lot of people are going to be feeling more anxious, more on edge, more unstable at this time. The thing that you thought was going to stay stable even throughout the entire Uranus and Taurus transit, that stuck with you even though you might have expected some sort of material change, that's the thing that's going to change. Like the last thing that is left on the to-do list there for the universe to throw like some wild extreme situation your way to break you out of complacency, that's the thing that's going to come up around this time. This isn't all bad. It's breaking you out of something that needs to be broken out of so you can kind of look forward to future progress. There is something new coming in for you. Your soul wants something new. There is something that is a part of your evolution and development that you will fully embrace later on this year. And this eclipse is clearing the way for that. And it's clearing the way for that in a way that is abrupt, disruptive. It might not feel so good, but it's doing it for a reason, and that reason will become much more clear as we move into 2026. So the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to benefit the most from this eclipse are the signs of Gemini and Libra, because this eclipse will be trining your ascendant sun or moon. To a lesser extent, I would say Sagittarius would also benefit from this because of the sextile, and also maybe a little bit Aries, but Aries is going to be busy dealing with that Neptune-Saturn conjunction. So even though, yes, it benefits from this eclipse, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. The people that are going to be affected the most in a way that's very challenging, and that's just going to throw you for a bigger loop, that's going to be people who have a lot of strong energy at the end degrees in Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. And so for you, plan lightly around this time, because whatever you think you're doing at the middle to end of February, your plans are very likely to change, and to change pretty dramatically. You want to make sure that you have wiggle room to make space for whatever it is that the universe is offering up to you at this time. So as we move into March, we're still in that first eclipse season, and we have another total lunar eclipse, and this is occurring in the sign of Virgo. So it's still on that Virgo-Pisces axis. It's fully in the sign of Virgo. This is not a preview of what's to come. It's a continuation of a story that began at the beginning of 2025 when the lunar nodes first shifted signs. Now, this is a culmination and a release. This is a south node lunar total eclipse. And so this is an energy where things are going to be reaching this culmination point where you're finally seeing where everything is headed, the new direction that you are meant to be moving into. This is a time of very faded energy. You're going to be feeling the synchronicities, you're going to be feeling the signs, but it's going to feel like you're being dragged along for the ride. The first eclipse in Aquarius is a north node eclipse, so it feels more like you are making decisions, but you're not. Like, it's like you're being so compelled to do the thing that's going to initiate the next stage, or that's going to become a bigger thing in that new cycle when the lunar nodes do fully shift into Aquarius and into Leo. That's a different energy. This eclipse on March 3rd feels more like you don't really know what's going on. You're just being taken for a ride. Like, the things that are changing in your life are coming from an external source. Like, things are changing and you're having to just kind of go along with it, but it feels very synchronistic. It feels like it is meant to happen because it is. A lot of this is going to be looking at the results of all of what you've created, all of what you've done over these last 12, 13 months with the lunar nodes in these signs. And this is actually a really nice eclipse. So we have this volatile one on February 17th. We have a lot of weird stuff happening at the end of February. And then we're blessed with this eclipse that is in a beautiful sextile and trine to Jupiter, which is exalted in the sign of Cancer. So this is bringing an opportunity your way. It could be an old opportunity that's coming back around, but you have to let go of something in order to make space for that. Or it could be an old opportunity that's coming back around that utilizes talents and gifts that come naturally to you or that you developed earlier on in life. There is definitely a past life connection to whatever it is that's going on or whatever opportunities are coming up for you at the time of this lunar eclipse and around the time of this lunar eclipse, which will be very active a few days before, a few days after. But this isn't the only activation period. We talk about this in the Karmic Power of Eclipses workshop that I teach. I can post a link down below if you guys are interested in that. But there are these activation periods that occur throughout the year for the eclipses. And so with eclipse energies, yeah, the time of the eclipse feels weird. There's definitely a lot of strange going on in the ethers, but it's not the whole story, and it's not always when the thing fully manifests. It's kind of like when something comes up. And so something's coming up here. It's an opportunity. It's maybe an opportunity from the past that's coming back around, or it's an opportunity to let something go in order to make space for that new path, that new destiny. But there is a big energy here. This is one of those times where a lot of people's lives will be flipped on their heads, and those people are likely going to be Virgos and Pisces people, also Cancer, because you have that Jupiterian energy. And for Cancers, you're going to have a very beautiful fated blessing that comes in for you around that time. I would say anyone with Sun, Moon, and Rising in the signs of Virgo, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, you're all going to be feeling this in a really positive way. You'll also feel it really nicely if you have a lot of Capricorn energy or a lot of Taurus energy. The signs that are going to be a little bit more challenged by the opportunities that come up are going to be the signs of Sagittarius and Gemini. It doesn't mean that what comes up is bad. It just means that it's going to feel a little bit more strenuous and a little bit more challenging, and you're going to have to overcome some obstacles in order to receive those fated karmic blessings that are intending to shift your path in a way that's more aligned with your destiny. Moving on to the end of March, we have Saturn going into its first and only sextile to Pluto. Saturn's going to be in the sign of Aries. Pluto is still at the beginning degrees in the sign of Aquarius. So there's only one exact pass of this transit, and this is it. Even though there's only one pass of this transit, we're going to be feeling it many weeks before and many weeks after, and the reverberations of such a massive alignment between these two outer planets are going to be very long lasting for many months and many years to come. Saturn is still at its fall position, so it's weakened in its ability to actually do things that are productive and useful, but Pluto's helping it out a little bit. In traditional astrology, Saturn is actually the planet of death and decay, and in modern Western astrology, Pluto is the planet associated with death, transformation, and rebirth. And so this is an energy of breaking something down and also creation of something new, because Saturn and Pluto are at those very early degrees in the signs that they're in. And so this is, again, a big theme that we're seeing throughout the year so far, is that there's still this energy of breaking things down and ending things, but there's also an energy of coming into something new. And because we've already dealt with a lot of these energies back in 2025, at least in a smaller way, even if this didn't come exact, there was still Saturn dancing with a sextile with Pluto. We already kind of know what's up. So it's not going to feel like 2025 where everybody was like, what the hell is going on? I don't know what to do. I don't know what steps to take next. I feel like everything is breaking apart, but I also feel like I have all these new things I need to start, but I don't know exactly how to do it or where to go and blah, blah, blah. Like everyone was feeling weird last year. This is not the same because we've already been there, done that to a certain extent, but there is something here where we need to, it's almost like an old paradigm or an old structure we've created in our individual lives has to die in order to create or rebuild or transform something new, to create a new, better structure that we're just starting to build. And this is going to bridge the gap and bridge the energies in two different areas of our lives that are going to be working harmoniously and synergistically with one another. That is going to differ depending on exactly where this falls in your chart, which we'll talk about when we get to the March forecast in 2026. So make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss that. But Saturn represents the bones of reality. It's the framework that keeps life steady and predictable. Pluto, on the other hand, runs deep. It's not the frame or the foundation that you're building, it's what's underneath it. Do you have something solid at your roots? Do you have something solid beneath the foundation that you are creating? Or do you have rot? Do you have stagnant water? Do you have something that's going to erode that foundation? That's really what this Saturn-Pluto energy in combination is looking at. Pluto exposes the truth, whether it's good or it's bad. It exposes our deepest and truest desires, whether or not we view those things as positive or negative. And Saturn is here to help us create structure around the things that are good, that are at the core, the truth of the matter. It's going to help us to rip out all of the rot. That's that Pluto energy. And it's going to help us to end and let go of anything that's decaying, but it's also going to help us build, even in the sign of Aries, where it's at its fall. It's going to help us build from this place of profound truth and profound desire, the core of what we actually really want and need. So the sun, moon, and rising signs that'll be the most positively aspected by the Saturn sextile to Pluto are going to be the air signs, so Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, and the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. There is no sign that's really going to be negatively impacted by this transit, because even those who are being hit really hard by Saturn, so people with a lot of cardinal sign energy, or those that are being hit really hard by Pluto, so the fixed sign energy, are getting a little bit of an out, because this sextile provides a mitigating influence where there is support coming in from an outside planetary energy to help you navigate the difficulty. The next major transit of 2026 is Uranus re-entering the sign of Gemini on April 25th. Now, Uranus in Gemini is nothing new. We experienced it for the very first time from July 7th through November 2nd of 2025, and it's coming back around again, but this time it's significant because it's staying in the sign of Gemini, and it will be in Gemini until May 22nd of 2033. So it's there for the long haul. Uranus is known as the Great Awakener. It brings shakeups, it brings disruption, it brings revolution. It changes things in ways that we never thought possible and that we never could have imagined prior to the Uranus transit through that area of our charts, that area of our lives, because we didn't have any context for it prior to the transit actually coming through. Because Uranus brings things that are so different, so unique, so outside of the box that we never could have seen them coming. And as I mentioned with the other energies involving Uranus so far this year, this is a time to expect the unexpected in a new area of our experience. Uranus in Gemini brings shakeups when it comes to Gemini types of themes. So connection, community, communication, our thought processes, and the way that we view the world on a day-to-day basis and interact and communicate with others on a day-to-day basis is subject to exponential change, radical change. And this is going to only be enhanced by the changes that we're going to see in technology around communication. We will see an acceleration in new communication technologies coming in around this time. Uranus in Gemini is an invitation to break free from your outdated patterns of thinking, communicating, interacting, and engaging with other people. It's also your invitation to branch out and seek connection with people who you wouldn't otherwise have sought connection with, people that are so outside of your normal social circle that you hadn't even given them a second glance prior to this time period, because these are the people that are going to open your mind. The Great Awakener is making it so. Over the next 8 years, the conversations you engage in, the information you absorb, and the communities that you belong to are going to change dramatically. I talked about this in a great amount of detail in my Uranus and Gemini forecast, which is still relevant for 2026 and beyond, all the way to 2033. So make sure that you check that out if you haven't already done so. But beginning in 2026, this is going to become a bigger energy and a bigger thing, and it's going to be very active all throughout the summer, which we're going to talk about in just a minute here. And so the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be most positively impacted by Uranus in the sign of Gemini are Libra and Aquarius. Geminis can be positively impacted as well, but it's going to be a little all over the place depending on your natal energy and what that looks like for you. The other signs that are going to be impacted most positively are going to be Aries and Leo, because Uranus is going to be sextiling your ascendant sun or moon or any of the planets that you have there. The planets that are going to have more shock and awe, disruptive energies that are going to really come to extremes, and where you're going to have these external manifestations of change that sort of force your hand and make you do things differently, that make you think about things differently, are going to be the mutable signs. So that's going to be Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, along with Gemini. Gemini is going to get some of the positive stuff and some of the really disruptive stuff. And again, it really depends on how this impacts you and your chart more personally. So check out that extended forecast after this video for Uranus in Gemini. If you're looking for some fresh energy and fresh opportunities, look no further than Jupiter entering the sign of Leo, which happens on July 29th of 2026, and it lasts all the way through to July 25th of 2027. So it'll be in the sign of generosity and authenticity and playfulness and performance for a full year. When Jupiter moves into Leo, the energy becomes larger than life. And this time it's here to make a lasting impression on all of us. So throughout this time period, especially throughout the summer of 2026, Jupiter is going to be making connections with essentially all of the outer planets and helping us in new and exciting ways. And so Jupiter just moved out of the sign of Cancer, where it was in its exaltation, where it's able to bring these really beautiful benefits in a way that's uninhibited and where we're very easily able to take advantage of the opportunities that come to us. Jupiter in Leo is in its peregrine, and so it's not doing anything special there. However, Leo is a sign of doing things big. And Jupiter is a planet of doing things big. And so the opportunities that come to us are going to be very big, very grandiose. They're going to be very elevated in some way, or our expectations around the opportunities are going to be elevated in some way, which in some cases can lead to disappointment. So you're going to have to be the one to discern whether or not you're placing too much energy that's larger than life on these opportunities that are coming up for you, the new recognition that you're receiving in some area of your life. Because Jupiter in the sign of Leo can get swept up in a wave of optimism, ambition, passion, and creativity. And that can be absolutely wonderful, but it can also be beyond the scope of what's possible in the here and now reality. And so that's something to be aware of as well. This is definitely an inflated ego type of energy. And so for some people, it is going to show up that way. But for the most part, Leos are just very playful. They're very heart-centered. They're very generous. And even though they do like to be recognized for their talents and gifts and the things that they're showing up with, they do so in a way that is true to themselves. And I really do love that about Leo. So this is about tapping into your authenticity and expanding upon it and being recognized for the gifts that you actually have to give to the world, being recognized for your generosity. So take this energy and run with it in that way, as opposed to trying to inflate your ego. The last time Jupiter was in Leo was from July 16th of 2014 all the way through to August 11th of 2015. And so reflecting on the themes of growth and new opportunity that bubbled up in your life around that period can reveal insights into the types of opportunities and the types of really good, powerful, positive energy that might reappear or appear in new ways during this cycle. The sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be most positively impacted by this transit are going to be the fire signs, so Aries and Sagittarius, along with the air signs, so Gemini and Libra especially, because there's going to be sextile energy from Jupiter. The sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to face challenges are going to be Taurus and Scorpio. However, the challenges here are not necessarily like bad things happening to you because it's Jupiter. It's more of those elevated expectations and inflated ego energies that we talked about with Jupiter in the sign of Leo. And so if you have a lot of Taurus or a lot of Scorpio, just have an awareness that those are things that can come up for you. And then we move in to July, and this is where things get really interesting. All right, so I'm going to list off a bunch of transits and dates just so that way you have an idea of what's happening and how close together this is all happening, with all of these outer planet energies converging all at once mid-July. And then I'll stop with the astrological mumbo jumbo and I will actually explain what the heck this means for you, because this is huge. And so on July 15th, this is where this all begins. And we're going to be feeling this well before, at least 2, 3, 4 weeks even before July, but especially after June 29th, when Jupiter shifts into the sign of Leo, we're going to start feeling all of this right away. But the first exact transit is Uranus sextile Neptune, and this came exact for the first time on November 20th of 2025. So energy from that time period will come back up. And this is the second pass of that transit on July 15th. This is a spiritual revolution energy. This is a highly creative type of energy where things are going to be shifting and changing in ways that we just really couldn't imagine prior to this. A lot of this is going to have to do with AI and blurring our reality, especially our digital reality. And so that's the first configuration that is a part of this big configuration. Then on July 17th, we have the first Uranus trine to Pluto, with Uranus in the sign of Gemini and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. This is an energy of a technological revolution, and it's an alignment that we haven't seen for over 100 years when Uranus trine Pluto in the 1920s. And we're not going to see a Uranus trine to Pluto again for over 300 years. And so this is a big deal. And so the first pass of this transit is happening, as I mentioned, on July 17th of 2026, but we have 2 additional passes. And so this is just the initiation into the energy. We started to feel what this might be like back in 2025 when Uranus first moved into Gemini just for a few months and was making that initial almost trine to Pluto. But this year it's coming exact, and it's going to come exact twice actually, with the second pass happening on November 29th of 2026 and the third and final pass happening next summer on June 15th of 2027. This is very much a revolutionary energy. Not only do we have Uranus, which is the great awakener, the energy of shakeups and changes that come very abruptly out of the blue, out of left field, but it's also Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, which Aquarius is the sign of revolution. It's the sign of breaking down paradigms, looking to the future, looking to future progress. And both Uranus and Aquarius are energies that are associated with technology and massive awakenings and changes in technology, innovation like we've never seen before. And this alignment, this trine, is associated with an AI revolution. It's associated with a technological revolution that's going to come in very quickly, very easily, where we're not even going to really notice, but it's just sort of there all of the sudden. And we really saw that back in 2025. We've seen that over the last few years, but especially while we had that Uranus trine to Pluto, it was almost like as if all of a sudden everything was connected to AI and we didn't even notice it happening. It just was there. And so this AI energy is going to become much stronger. This is also a revolutionary energy when it comes to decentralization, when it comes to grassroots movements, when it comes to attempting to bring power back into the hands of the people. Pluto in Aquarius is an energy that goes against hierarchies, which is very different than what was going on when Pluto was transiting the sign of Capricorn, and we saw a bigger concentration of top-down hierarchy and plutocracy and governments being in bed with corporations. Now that's still happening, but people are very much aware of it. And there is a lot of push toward a non-hierarchical structure, a decentralization of power. And you can see that with things like blockchain and cryptocurrency, but you can see that on the ground and at the level of the people as well in real life, not just through technology. This is also a big energy of interconnectedness, where we are going to become more connected to one another than ever before. If you thought that we were already meshed together through the internet, through our phones, through all of these ways where we can stay connected 24/7, this is going to be next level for that. And on a personal level, this is going to bring about a personal revolution and evolution, where there is a massive change that we need to make in our lives to liberate ourselves from something, to liberate ourselves from old ideas, old paradigms, old ways of thinking, because this is happening in the air signs. This is where we have to go about problem solving, go about making changes in ways that we never before even considered or thought possible. We're going to have changes to our social circle, to our community. We're going to have changes to a lot of different areas of life. And the way that this is going to come about more specifically will be aligned with how it shows up in your birth chart. And so we will definitely get into this as we move into July and do an all signs forecast for it. But watch the Uranus and Gemini forecast and my Aquarius Pluto forecast to get a feel for how these two things are going to be connected. The Pluto side of this is going to bring about an intense pull toward getting in touch with our deepest and truest desires, our strangest and weirdest desires, and not caring at all what other people think about it, and making changes throughout other areas of our lives that support us in connecting with who we truly are and what we truly need and want, not just now, but into the future. And the Uranus trine to Pluto specifically, even though it's happening amongst all of these other transits that we're going to be talking about for July, is going to show up most positively for those who have energy in the air signs. And so that's going to be Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. It's also going to be really positive for those who have energy in the fire signs. And so that's going to be Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And that's because there will be sextile energy coming off of this trine into those signs. And so you're going to have a lot of support in making the changes that really align you with what you desire. And these changes can run in extremes, but they're not going to feel disruptive or bad or chaotic. It's kind of like things really take a massive turn and you're able to really magnetize and draw in what you truly desire by making the appropriate changes. And it goes quite smoothly for those signs. The signs that might have more difficulty are Virgo and Pisces. You might have a little difficulty in Taurus and Scorpio, but really this is a mitigating influence for the difficulties that you're already experiencing because of the transits of Uranus in the sign of Gemini and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. So, of course, this isn't happening in a vacuum. There's a lot of energy going on all at once here. So on July 20th, we have 2 additional massive transits happening. Jupiter will trine Neptune. This is the only pass of this very spiritually evolved, awakening energy. It feels very idealistic. It feels very gregarious with that Leo energy. It feels very opening and expansive and interconnected and compassionate. But Jupiter will also oppose Pluto, and it's going to be in a T-square with Chiron. Now, the combination of Jupiter in this T-square with Pluto and Chiron and the Uranus-Pluto trine hasn't happened since 1922. That's the last time we actually had a Uranus-Pluto trine, and we happen to have this similar T-square but in different signs happening at the onset of that transit. Now, 1922 was an interesting year. It coincided with the Irish Civil War and also a major turning point in Mussolini's rise to power. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen this time around, but I am saying there are similar signatures where something big is going to change, and it might not be as easy and light and fluffy as this Uranus-Pluto trine would lead us to believe, because there are other things going on in the astrology. Jupiter opposing Pluto makes things run in extremes. Jupiter is all about me, me, me. It's identity politics. It's someone being front and center and the focal point of attention. And Pluto is all about power and control. Pluto in Aquarius is power and control that has to do with technology and the technocracy that is forming right now across the world. And so we are going to see something that would have similar energies and signatures to what has happened last time around but it's not going to be exactly the same. We're in a completely different world right now. Our reality is very different than 1922. And all of these planets are in completely different signs than they were back in 1922. And I'm not a mundane astrologer. I didn't look for this intentionally. It's just something that I happened to see when I was doing my historical research, just to kind of round out this forecast and have a better understanding of how this is going to impact all of us personally and collectively. Now, on the 22nd of July, Jupiter will also sextile Uranus. And so we have this minor triangle forming between Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. We have two minor triangles forming, actually, which we'll talk about in just a second. And so this is where the energy can flow in harmony. And it is very different than what was going on back in 1922. There is a lot more flow, a lot more harmony, a lot more positive potential with the configuration that's happening in July. But we do have to be aware that there is some challenge as a potential as well. And so this minor triangle is really all about taking our most idealistic visions, our most optimistic vantage point of what we want to create in our reality, the changes that we want to see in the world, and communicating it to other people, to our community, to our friends and family, to the masses if you have a platform to do so. This is about speaking what we want into reality, using words as spells, right? We always see that meme and hear those things about how it's called spelling for a reason. Now's the time to take that to heart. And the final part of this transit is one that I think is probably most interesting. It's Neptune in the sign of Aries in a sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, this is the very first of 13 passes of this transit that will occur over the next 6 years. This is a major energy and a major theme that's going to follow us for many years to come. It's the very beginning of a very long story. This is not something that we're going to see or feel all at once when it comes to transformation and the way that it will impact us personally and collectively. It's something that's going to very gently unfold over 6 full years. And it's something that we have to very closely pay attention to on an internal level, because Neptune and Pluto are outer transpersonal planets. And so it's going to be more internal in its effect. It's going to be more subtle in its effect a lot of the time. Sextiles are also harmonious, but they're not as overt as trines, so they have to be activated. And on the collective level, we're not going to see this all come to pass all at once. But Neptune sextile Pluto, regardless of the sign that it's in, is a deepening of our interconnectedness with other dimensional realities. It's a deepening of our understanding that there are things that lie beyond the boundaries of our current senses and our ability to sense things with our 5 senses. Not everything is tangible, not everything is provable, even with modern scientific method. Although with Pluto and Aquarius, I think there will be attempts to start proving the unprovable, to start looking at the metaphysical, to start looking at the paraphysical, to start looking at the psychic and the otherworldly in a more scientific way, or to adapt the scientific method to accommodate for these things that can't be explained with the way that we are looking at things in this time period, in this day and age. The way that our understanding of reality is right now is going to shift very dramatically over the next 6 years. And so by the time we hit February 29th of 2032, which is the last pass of this exact transit, the way that we understand our reality and our connection to everything else on this planet and outside of this planet, everything that is within the bounds of this dimension, but maybe is connected to other dimensional energies, other realities that we can't quite fathom just yet, all of that is going to shift so dramatically that it's going to be very paradigm busting. It's going to be a very different world that we're living in by the time this transit is through. Now, so the last time that this happened, that this sextile between Neptune and Pluto occurred, was between 1976 and 1986. We also had a pass of this back in the 1950s. But this time around, because of the irregular orbits of Neptune and Pluto, we won't see a Neptune sextile to Pluto happen again until 2337, so 2337. That's a a long time from now. That is over 300 years past the end of this transit. That's 305 years after the pass of this transit. And so it's kind of like a go big or go home energy. We've been going through these smaller spiritual awakenings, these smaller leaps in our understanding of our reality and how everyone and everything is connected. This is going to really exponentially push us into something new. And a lot of the reason for this is going to be technological. There is new technology that will be coming out that will shift the way that we understand consciousness, that we understand what's tangible and what's possible. And so that's a big part of what's going on here in July. And this is part of another minor triangle. And so this first pass of Neptune in sextile with Pluto is also going to be in a sextile and trine with Uranus. And so we have this big, massive outer planet triangle that really lasts until 2028 on and off. 2027 is the last time we'll have the Pluto trine to Uranus exact. But because Uranus is going to be dancing with all of this for the entire time, the effects of it are going to last really through 2028. And that's when we're going to see a big exponential change in the way that we think about the world around us. And on a personal level, this is a time of deep spiritual exploration and a change in the way that we view our reality on an individual level. This is going to be a change in the way that we connect with other dimensional energies. If you want to hone in on your psychic abilities, if you want to hone in on your intuition, if you want to deepen your spiritual connection, this is the time, this time period now through 2028. I think a lot of people are going to be really shifting their belief systems and incorporating that into the practices that they do in everyday life to care for themselves and to care for their soul, to care for their spirit. There's going to be a religious and spiritual revolution around this time period for a lot of people, and that's going to impact us all individually. And again, technology will play a very strange part in all of this. And the summer of 2026 is where it all comes together. Now, before we move on from July, before we move on from this summer energy, I have to go back and mention what went on in 2025. Back in 2025, all of the outer planets, save for Pluto, which just shifted at the end of 2024 fully into Aquarius, but all of the other outer planets and the north and south nodes shifted signs at some point throughout the year. That was a historic moment. That was a big energy in the astrology. And a lot of people felt like things were crumbling and dissolving beneath their feet, and they needed to go into something new, but they couldn't figure out what it was or how to do it. And every time they moved into a certain direction, something else would crumble, something else would demand their attention. And it was really hard to get your feet on solid ground because there was so much change happening. This year, you see how it all connects. These different parts of your life where you experienced these shifts and you couldn't figure out exactly what to do with it or what comes next. This summer of 2026 is where it all starts to come together, where it all starts to finally connect and interconnect and make sense. All of these different separate parts of your experience are connected in some way, and July is that peak pivotal moment where you're going to see fully how they all fit together, how these pieces fit together to create a new story that's really going to guide your life and your path moving forward. And so the next big shift in 2026 is when the North and South node enter Aquarius and Leo. We're going to have the North node moving into Aquarius and the South node entering Leo. And on July 26th, this is when the true node, so the node that's more accurate to the actual calculations for the eclipses, if you guys already aren't aware, the North and South nodes are not bodies that are floating out in space. They are calculations that were designed to predict the solar and lunar eclipses, and the true node is the more modern one that accounts for wobbles in the moon and things of that nature. And so that is what's shifting on July 26th. But the mean node, which has more historical precedent and use in astrology, doesn't change signs until August 18th of 2026. And personally, I've been using the mean node a lot more than the true node in the past couple of years after doing a lot of troubleshooting and research. And so I invite you to just feel it out. See if you feel these shifts in your life closer to the time when the true node enters into Aquarius on July 26th, or when the mean node, which is the average node, the average motion, enters the sign of Aquarius on August 18th. Although to be fair, we're entering into eclipse season in August, so you might feel it stronger in August either way. And so the north and south nodes changing signs represents a change in our fate, a change in our destiny, a change in our collective and individual direction. There is a new path for our soul to evolve into and away from in order to accomplish what we came here to accomplish in this lifetime. This is a destiny point where there is a shift in our focus, a shift in our energy, a shift in our fate. And because the North Node is entering in Aquarius, there's going to be a much heavier focus on, again, technology, technological growth and advancement. There are going to be technologies that come out over the course of this time period, which lasts from August 18th of 2026 through May 7th of 2028, that we could never have imagined, and that shift our collective destiny, our collective fate in a really big way. The North Node is also insatiable. There's going to be an insatiable need for growth and new development when it comes to science and technology, and also an insatiable need for humanitarian connection, for human connection. And there is going to be, I think, a big pull toward collectivism and related ideologies that could go sour when we have the North Node. It's too much of something, and by the end of it, it's kind of overkill. And so we might see what that looks like, again, toward the end of 2027. But this is about growth and new development in those areas. And in our lives, we're going to have a lot of growth and development and changes in our fate that are tied on a personal level to shifts in technologies, shifts in our scientific understanding, shifts in innovation in our personal ideas and our personal understanding of things. And so that's going to be a big thing. There's going to be a shift away from this energy around personality, this energy around personality politics, this energy around influencers and people being sort of front and center and everybody looking to them for guidance and advice, because we're going to have the South Node in the sign of Leo. We'll also see, because of that Jupiter energy, more of a spiritual bent or a giving back that will come from these types of people, people that are really big names, people that are celebrities, people that are influencers. There will be a shift in wanting to be more generous, wanting to give more. And also some people really vying for attention as the attention is shifting away from them and onto other things, like probably AI generated actors and things like that, I would say, is a part of it, or AI generated influencers. So that's going to be a really interesting time. But on an individual level, this is focusing less on you getting recognition and doing things more out of generosity to help the collective. It's a balance between your ego and the needs of the group, like what's good for the group versus what you want and what you feel you deserve. And so the signs that are going to get the biggest, most grandiose, fated changes and shifts throughout this North and South Node transit through Aquarius and Leo are going to be Aquarius and Leo. So you guys are going to be taken for a ride. Fate is going to come in and turn your world upside down. You are on one path right now. You will not be on the same path after this is all said and done in 2027. This is also going to be kind of challenging, where karmic circumstances are going to come up and you're going to be faced with these hurdles, these challenges, these things that feel kind of crunchy and difficult, that are going to really weigh on your sense of stability and longevity, that are going to really weigh on your sense of control, because especially with the signs of Taurus and Scorpio, there is a need for physical control or physical stability in Taurus, and psychological and mental control, knowing what's going to happen next, and certainty in the sign of Scorpio. And you're just not going to be having that during this time. The air signs are going to be feeling this really positively, especially Gemini and Libra, because you're going to have a trine with the North Node going on. The fire signs, same thing. You're going to have a trine with the North Node going on if you have your sun, moon rising in Aries or in Sagittarius. And so for you, fate is going to flow a lot more easily. You're going to be moving into a new direction in a gentle, synchronistic sort of way, where the right support systems come in to help you and guide you in that new path. And speaking of the karmic lunar nodes and energy that throws us into a new path more aligned with our destiny, shortly after the nodes change signs, we have our very next eclipse season, and our very first eclipse of this season is going to be a total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. This is a big reset and a big unraveling. This is a letting go of the old paradigm, the old path that you were on, and then moving into something brand new, or at least making space to move into something brand new. Now, as I mentioned, the true node is already going to be in Aquarius, which means the south node, given that calculation, will be in Leo, but it will be a few days before the mean node catches up. Either way, this is a very close conjunction between the nodes and the sun and moon at the time of this new moon eclipse, and this is a massive, massive reset energy. And what I love about this energy is it's about looking toward the future for lasting, sustainable changes that we need to make, and things that we can let go of that will support that. So it's kind of like we have to clear away space to build something new. With this new moon eclipse in trine with Saturn and Aries, even though Saturn is still at its fall position, it's not as easily able to build what it needs to build. There is a mutual support going on there. And so this is a time where fate takes the reins. Anytime we have a south node eclipse, it feels like we are being led in a certain direction, and we don't really have a choice in what's going on. It's like everything is happening externally, and we are responding to it and just going along for the ride. Versus the north node eclipses, where it feels like we have more agency, even though we really don't, and it's part of our destiny. But whatever's going on during this time, it's going to feel more confusing. It's going to feel more like we don't have the full picture, especially because it's the first eclipse in Leo. We don't have the full picture. We are at the very beginning of a journey to collect parts of ourselves and parts of our soul that we left behind, that we need to reintegrate in this lifetime, but also a journey to let go of these past cycles, this past baggage, these things that repeat themselves over and over in our lives, especially when it comes to our ego and our ego needs and our need for recognition, that no longer serve us anymore in the present. And so that's going to be a big lesson of this eclipse. And just like with the north and south nodes, similar signs are going to be impacted in a positive way versus a negative way. Definitely Leo and Aquarius, especially if you have your sun, moon, or rising at the end degrees of Leo and Aquarius, are going to be taken for more of a ride. You're going to have a bigger transformation. If you have your sun, moon, rising in Taurus or Scorpio, you will face some greater challenges of letting go and loss of control during this time. And if you have your sun, moon, rising in the fire signs specifically, especially the middle to end degrees of the fire signs, which are going to be Aries and Sagittarius, you're going to experience this as a positive, very harmonious change where the sign synchronicities and support just show up as if it was meant to happen. And then continuing on with the August eclipse season, we have a partial lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces, and this is hugely significant because it is the final eclipse on the Virgo-Pisces axis. Even though the nodes have shifted, there is something that we have left undone that fate is requiring of us that's going to come up around the time of this eclipse. Now, as a partial lunar eclipse, this is a minor eclipse, and as an out-of-sign eclipse, it's not going to be quite as strong as some of the other eclipses that we've experienced, but trust me, you're not going to want to tune out of what the universe has in store for you at the time of this eclipse and around the time of this eclipse. You're going to feel it the most a few days before and a few days after August 27th, and this is the final chance to move the rest of the way into whatever it is that you've been working toward, whatever it is that your soul's been shifting into for the last 18 months. This is a one last chance. This is the closing act of the Pisces Virgo axis. We're not going to have eclipses in Pisces and Virgo again for another roughly 9 years, and we won't have them in the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo again for another 18.5 years. This is the last chance to fully embrace and move all the way into what your soul has been craving, what your soul has been pushing you toward over the last 18 months. And this is a time where you have been moving into something based on your own volition, based on your own actions, based on your own perception of choice, but it's felt like you didn't have a choice. You felt this insatiable need to leap forward into something new. Now's the time where you're going all in. This is the last little push, the last little bit of energy that you need to make it all a reality. Mercury is actually in its chariot in the sign of Virgo opposite this full moon eclipse. And so there's something here where you have to kind of get out of your head about it in order to move into the guidance that your soul is providing for you, in order to embrace the intuitive messages, the signs, the synchronicities, the support that comes up in a way that feels fated, the things that feel bigger and beyond just you. That's what you really need to be focusing on and moving into at the time of this eclipse. This is also a time where a pretty big change could occur. It's kind of like one last big pivot needs to happen for you to fully dive in to that new energy, for you to fully embrace the new life that you've been building and creating for yourself, the new path you've been forging over the last 18 months, because we have Uranus in a T-square with the sun and moon as a part of this eclipse. This is a big pivot, or this is one last wild opportunity or wild disruption that is pushing you all the way in the path. It's kind of like, all right, we have no more time for this. We have no more time for mucking around. We have no more time for dragging our feet. You need to change now. And that's going to become very apparent at the time of this lunar partial eclipse. Now, the signs that will be feeling this the strongest, that will be feeling the pull of fate in a very overt and unavoidable way, are going to be Virgo and Pisces, especially Pisces around this time. The other signs that are going to be a little bit more challenged are going to be especially Gemini, but also Sagittarius. And the signs that are going to have a really easy, nice, flowy time where the synchronicities and the support just show up and you don't have to do much to activate it are going to be the signs of Cancer and Scorpio. The signs of Taurus and Capricorn, so if your sun, moon, or rising are in Taurus or Capricorn, you're also going to feel this in a more positive way, but you're going to have to do a little bit of work to activate that positivity. Then at the end of August, on the 31st, we have the very first pass of Jupiter in trine with Saturn. We have the great benefic in a harmonious aspect with the great malefic, who is in its fall and causing all sorts of problems and chaos. This is where we get a life preserver, a life raft thrown to us and out, a mitigating force that's going to help us to finally build the thing that we need to build, or finally tackle that challenge. It's like we've been working really hard and all of these obstacles have been coming up and we've had to pivot and deal with them in a very hasty, quick, roundabout way, like putting duct tape over it instead of fixing it properly. Jupiter is coming in and giving you a lifeline and helping you to actually build something in the area of life that's being really inhibited by Saturn. It's kind of like Saturn's going through Aries and things are just at a standstill. And even when you're making progress, it's like half-assed progress. It's not going to be what you want it to be or what you need it to be to make it sustainable into the future. Jupiter in Leo is giving you a sense of perspective and optimism that's going to help you to see what you need to actually do to accomplish your goals along the way. And it's going to be doing it 3 different times. And so the first pass is on August 31st of 2026, but it's going to come around again on April 3rd of 2027, and then it'll make its final pass on July 11th of 2027. This represents a period of growth over the next year that requires effort and adaptability, that requires optimism and generosity and authenticity, but also the ability to think on your feet and to work really hard in the moment when it needs to happen. And the potential payoff is one that you shape yourself with your own ability to take advantage of opportunities as they come up, and with your own ability to put in the sweat equity, the hard work, and the labor. The sun, moon, and rising signs that will be most positively impacted by the Jupiter trine to Saturn are going to be Leo, of course, Aries, because you're getting a mitigating influence, and so you've had it a little bit rough, but by this summer, things will start to pick up and look up because you do have that help, that life support that's coming from the Great Benefic. Also, Sagittarius is going to be feeling this really positively, where all these different areas of life are going to be working synergistically in order to help you accomplish something, a big goal, a big ambition. We also have a little bit of a challenge going on here for people who have a lot of cardinal energy, so those who have their sun, moon rising in Cancer, in Libra, or in Capricorn. You've been going through it along with Aries, and this is gonna, again, provide a mitigating influence, although it's not quite as strong as what's going on in Aries. And so it lightens the load somewhat because there's someone or something in a different area of life where things are going a lot more easily and smoothly, and that can help you with the challenges that you've been facing. Then moving on and getting closer to the fall of 2026, on September 15th, we have our second of 13 passes of Neptune sextile Pluto. We spoke a lot about what Neptune sextile Pluto represents in the July section of this forecast, where we had that tangled web of the outer planets all making connections with one another. On September 15th of 2026, and for a few weeks before and after, there is less external noise mucking things up and more focus on this Uranus-Neptune sextile and the minor triangle between Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. And so we're going to feel this a lot more clearly. There's not going to be all of this external stuff, because in July it's going to feel like a lot of action is happening. A lot is occurring that we've been building toward but unable to connect the dots around for essentially a year prior or more to that time period in July. And so we're going to be busy. There's going to be a lot happening. There's going to be a lot of momentum and a lot of opportunity. And so we might miss the other opportunity, which is to connect to ourselves, to connect more deeply to our spirituality, to understand things on a transpersonal and interpersonal level, to understand how everything is all connected, how to use technology in order to forge those connections. All of the wonderful things that are connected to this minor triangle are going to be much more amplified in September. And those who are going to benefit most are going to be those who have energy in the minor triangle. So those who have sun, moon, or rising in the signs of Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius, you're going to be feeling this most positively. Sagittarius will also feel this in a positive way, along with Leo. You guys are going to be hit in a harmonious aspect to the minor triangle. And this really is not going to be hurtful or challenging to anyone, because this is a mitigating force. So even if you are having some Neptunian fog in Aries, even if you're having a lot of really intense, deep death and rebirth transformation moments with Pluto, or even if Uranus is throwing your life into chaos, this is going to provide a lifeline. It's going to provide support in other ways that can help you see the light at the end of the tunnel, that can help you out. And then in October, we have Venus stationing to go retrograde in Scorpio, and it's going to transit through Scorpio and Libra from October 3rd of 2026 through October 13th of 2026. And so the pre-shadow of this Venus retrograde actually begins on August 31st. And so you're going to start feeling a little bit of this energy. And this is a very strange retrograde. So Venus represents our connections to other people. It's our love language. It's the way that we show love and appreciation to others, and the way that we prefer that love and appreciation is shown to us in return. It's also our ability to experience pleasure, especially on the material plane. It's our ability to do things that bring us joy, that feel good to us in some way. It's our ability to value other things in our lives, and also our ability to value ourselves. And so when we have Venus going retrograde, it's a reflection on what we truly value, what means the most to us, not just in our relationships, but within ourselves and within other aspects of our lives. It's also a reflection on what brings us pleasure, what makes us feel good in this tangible material reality, and what doesn't feel so good. This is looking at, whether or not the relationships we have, those people value us in the right way. And this is often a revisiting of past relationships, or at least past dynamics in relationships for certain people. This is also an energy around money and finances, and especially while it's in Scorpio, that could be an interesting dynamic. And so Venus is going to be retrograding in its fall position. So Venus is exalted in Pisces, where it's able to do all the beautiful Venusian, compassionate, interconnected, pleasurable things very, very easily with all the support. But when it's in its fall, it is unsupported. Venus in its fall tends to be very possessive, very obsessive, very controlling, very jealous, very suspicious of other people. It can also be sometimes manipulative. And so this is going to be a really challenging time. Not only is Venus going against its normal nature, not only is Venus inhibited in moving forward in relationships and moving past all the jealousy, all of the emotional intensity, all of the old wounds that are going to be dredged up, but it's also in the sign of Scorpio. It's not supported. So relationships are really not supported at this time. Old toxic connections are very likely to bubble back up during this time in order to be fully released, because you need to be all in or all out, and hopefully you'll have the sense to be all out. The other thing that's happening while Venus is retrograding in Scorpio that makes it just 10 times more intense is that it's squaring Pluto. Pluto is a planet of extremes, especially extreme psychological intensity. And so this is going to be working on your psyche. It's going to be situations that come up interpersonally that trigger you and that cause you to have to look deeper for healing, that cause you to have to transform something. This is going to be a time where people's emotions are going to run high, and people might run to extremes for escapism through types of physical pleasure, especially sexual pleasure, because Scorpio does tend to be a more sexually driven sign because it's ruled by Mars, and Mars is the planet of sexual expression. And so this is a time where that old toxic hookup might come back around. This is also a time where we might have to deal with toxic patterns when it comes to materialism, when it comes to our spending. This is also a very big energy around debt with that Pluto energy that could come up that you have to work on and work through. This could be interpersonal trauma within a family unit. It really depends on how this is showing up for you personally, but that's going to come up when we get into the forecast for the Venus retrograde in Scorpio later on in 2026. So what's interesting about this is that the Venus retrograde goes from Scorpio into Libra. And so Libra is the position where Venus is in its home sign. Venus rules the sign of Libra. It loves being there. It's very balanced. It's very harmonious. And this is going to be occurring from the 25th through the 13th. And so it's going to feel like night and day. It's like, what fresh hell is this? During the first part of that Venus retrograde from October 3rd through October 25th. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, things open up. Old relationships that come back in are coming back in a harmonious way. You're able to kind of rebalance things, especially things that have gotten really off kilter during the nasty part of the Venus retrograde that we just went into. And during its transit through Libra, Venus is also going to be forming a beautiful harmonious trine to the karmic north node, bringing faded new connections into your life or revisiting old connections in a brand new way. Still not always the best time to get back with somebody during a Venus retrograde because usually it doesn't stick. So this is more about healing and coming back into harmony and having better relationships moving forward because you revisited the energy as opposed to bringing that person back into your life. And if you're already partnered, this is about recreating a sense of harmony or going back and revisiting something in your relationship that needs to be revisited in order to create a better balance and mutual respect moving forward. Venus is also going to sextile Jupiter, which brings in opportunities, external opportunities, but also opportunities that impact your relationship, opportunities for fun, for passion, for romance that can come back into your life in a new way or in a way that needs to be reintegrated that continues on into the future. And so past connections, yes, can come back. They're not here for drama. They're here for creating or recreating a sense of harmony. Your current connections are going to go through a rebalancing during this time, especially if you had some hardship going on during Venus retrograde in Scorpio, where there was jealousy issues or other things, power and control issues in relationship coming up. And it's a time for healing and reconciliation during the second half of this Venus retrograde. Now, the post-shadow, where you're dealing with the aftermath of the retrograde, occurs from November 14th of 2026 through December 15th of 2026. And so we have this extended period from the end of August through the middle of December where Venus is moving slowly, where it's sitting in the signs of Scorpio and Libra. And so we're visiting and revisiting these lessons more than once. And so the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be most positively impacted in a more harmonious way are going to be Gemini, Cancer, Virgo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Capricorn, as well as Pisces. And the sun, moon, and rising signs that are going to be facing more relationship challenges, especially jealousy, possessiveness, toxicity in relationships, is going to be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And that's not just relationships with other people. This could be a lot of toxicity around your own self-worth and your relationship with yourself. And that could be also reflected through the connections that come back around or the issues and current connections that are happening during that first half of the Venus retrograde for those fixed signs. On November 11th of 2026, we have a beautiful karmic blessing. Jupiter will conjunct the south node, the mean node, and it's actually going to do so 3 different times. The first pass is at the end of 2026 in November, the second pass is on March 1st of 2027, and the third is on April 19th of 2027. This moment in time carries the feeling of receiving blessings or opportunities that seem unearned on the surface, but they resonate as deeply deserved. That's because these are karmic rewards that are rooted in past actions that you've taken or made in this lifetime or in a previous lifetime that you don't have memory of, but you have a sensation around. And of course, you don't have to frame this as being, multiple lifetimes, but that's just the way that I see it and view it based on my own personal direct experience. But it could be that you did something when you were a child and you're finally getting the benefits or the rewards, the karmic rewards of those actions. It could also be that you're getting the karmic rewards of something that occurred in your ancestral lineage, something that your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents did or accomplished that you are finally getting to reap the benefits of in this lifetime. This is a time to be blindly optimistic and to take action on any strange, synchronistic, off-the-wall opportunities that come your way. The opportunities that come up will feel familiar, weirdly deserved. It'll feel like, oh, this was inevitable, but you won't exactly know where it's going, where it's going to lead, how it connects to anything else that's going on in your life. This first pass of the conjunction between Jupiter and the South Node is different from the rest because Jupiter will also be in a conjunction with Mars. This is a risk-taking, action-taking, quick energy where the synchronicities, the signs, the messages, the events that unfold and transpire in your life come up so fast and so unexpectedly. You have to take action right now in the moment. It's about living in the moment and not living in your head. It's about not looking a gift horse in the mouth and asking too many questions and just rolling with it because it feels exciting. It feels passionate. Your ambitions align with whatever the cosmos are bringing to you in your life. And so I love this energy. This is going to be most positive for those of you who have Sun, Moon, or Rising in the sign of Leo, in the sign of Aries, or in the sign of Sagittarius. It's also going to be quite positive to those who have Sun, Moon, Rising, or other planetary energies in the signs of Gemini or Libra. It's going to be a little bit more interesting or challenging for those who have Sun, Moon, or Rising in the signs of Taurus, Scorpio, or Aquarius, especially Taurus and Scorpio. It's going to feel like you have overinflated expectations for the thing that's happening, or you're taking it too far. You're diving all in too hard. And so while I told everyone else to take a big leap, if you are a Scorpio or a Taurus Sun, Moon, or Rising, you might want to check and make sure that you're not leaping over a cliff. And then finally, we close out the year with one more major transit, and that is Uranus making its second trine to Pluto. We talked really in depth over the summer forecast about that Uranus trine to Pluto and the connection between what happened at the start of 1922 and some of the other difficulties that are connected to it with all of those other configurations that happened in July. But in November, Uranus is going to trine Pluto in a way that is not meshed up and mixed up with all of the other chaos. And it's still part of that minor triangle with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so this is just another iteration of that. At the end of the year, we might see some breakthrough technologies. We might see especially some major breakthroughs in communication technology. There could be something that comes up at the end of the year that maybe was introduced in July, but becomes a bigger thing that we are revisiting and bringing into our reality that really alters the way that we engage with our community, that we engage with other people, that we think about the world around us. And so that could be a big thing coming up on an interpersonal, collective level, but also on a personal level. This is a time where you're going to be thinking more deeply and in a way that is very outside of the box and having conversations over this holiday season that are very outside of the box, but not in an argumentative type of way. It's kind of like envisioning what's possible within a group, and you're going to be connecting with groups of people, likely, depending on who you are and how you spend your holidays. And there's going to be a lot of really positive, really interesting conversation around new developments, new technologies, thinking toward the future, thinking toward the way things could be, and that's actually going to be rather productive. And on a personal level, that's going to stimulate the need to make changes. This is also a time where you're going to revisit deep personal changes that are going to align your life with your deeply held desires. And so this is about looking at what do you desire and what do you want your connections, communications, interactions with other people to look like moving forward. And whether or not that involves technology or social media, or whether or not that involves restricting, limiting, transforming the way that you use that, or doing things differently than other people are doing. And so that's going to be a big part of the end of the year and the conversations that we're having. And really, this is a milestone of the entire 2026-2027 astrology, is this Uranus trine to Pluto. It's a big thing, and we're going to be feeling it throughout that entire time period, not just right now, although it will be amplified. I hope you enjoyed this extended long-term forecast for the entirety of 2026. I put a lot of love and research and dedication into creating this for you, and so I really hope that if you enjoyed it, you'll share it with a friend who you feel like could benefit from the information that I share with you today and the foresight of what's to come in 2026. Also, make sure that you find me on all of the podcasting platforms, or at least your favorite podcasting platform. Follow me there, leave me a 5-star review, subscribe to my channel because that helps me out so much here on YouTube, and comment below and let me know what you're most looking forward to in 2026 in terms of the astrology that we discussed, but also what you're maybe a little nervous about, because that's okay too. There's nothing to be scared of course, but we all have those things where we're like, I don't know about that one. And maybe we can help each other feel better. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this one, you're gonna like these forecasts floating around up here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next forecast, which will be for January of 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye.